Welcome to the Explainer. You know, in a world that feels like it's getting more chaotic by the day, we're all told the same thing, right? Forecast, plan, try to get ahead of the next big crisis. But today, we're going to look at a totally different idea. What if the real key isn't trying to predict the future, but building a life that actually gets stronger from all that randomness?
This whole explainer is built on that powerful, kind of radical idea from the thinker Nassim Taleb, and he argues that our goal shouldn't be to try and tame the world with perfect knowledge, because, let's be honest, that's impossible. Instead, it's about structuring our lives, our finances, our entire way of thinking so that we don't need to understand everything to thrive in it.
I mean, just look at the headlines, right? That's what you see, pure uncertainty. It feels like the world is on fire, and what's the standard advice everyone gives you? Be resilient. Just grit your teeth and survive it. But Taleb says, no, that is not nearly enough. In fact, he thinks that's a pretty dangerous way to think.
You see, he suggests that just enduring chaos totally misses the point. The greatest strength, whether we're talking about our own bodies, our careers, or even whole societies, it doesn't come from just resisting disorder. It comes from harnessing it, from using stress and shocks to actually grow stronger than you were before.
Okay, let's really dig into this, because this is a big one. Taleb says our modern world has completely fallen for what he calls the turkey problem. We're just like that turkey. We mistake a long period of calm for proof of permanent stability. We see 1,000 good days in a row and we think, hey, day 1001 is going to be exactly the same, all while ignoring this huge catastrophic risk that's building up right under our noses.
And this is the trap, right? This obsession we have with manufacturing safety, trying to smooth out every single bump in the road and sterilize our world of any stress. By getting rid of all those small, manageable shocks, we stop ourselves from adapting. And the paradox is, this makes us incredibly vulnerable when a single major blow-up finally happens.
So how do you escape this trap? How do you stop being the turkey? Well, it's this powerful concept Taleb calls antifragility. And it is a complete shift in how you see the world. It's about seeing all that volatility not as some threat you have to manage, but as a source of energy, something you can actually harness.
Okay, so to really get this, we need a new vocabulary, a new way to think about how things react to stress. And Taleb breaks it all down into this simple, really elegant three-part framework, what he calls the Triad.
So, on one end of the spectrum, you have the fragile. Pretty simple. It hates shocks. Think of a porcelain cup. It just shatters under stress. It's living under this constant threat of the sword of Damocles, where just one surprise, one little thing going wrong means total collapse.
Then, in the middle, you've got the robust, or what most people call resilient. This is what we're always told to be, right? It can take a hit and it bounces right back to where it was. The classic metaphor here is the phoenix. Yeah, it can endure the fire and be reborn. But here's the key. It doesn't actually improve from the experience.
But here's the goal. This is Taleb's big, radical idea, to be anti-fragile. And this is so much more than just the opposite of fragile. The anti-fragile actively feeds on shocks. The best metaphor is the Hydra from mythology, right? You cut off one of its heads and two grow back in its place. Harm literally makes it stronger.
And you can see how this maps directly onto our own lives. Think about it. A corporate employee with just one source of income. That's fragile. One layoff and it's game over. An artisan, maybe they're robust. They can lose a client and be okay. But an entrepreneur, they're anti-fragile. Because every small failure, every experiment that doesn't work, gives them information that makes their whole business stronger. They don't just put up with mistakes, they actually love them.
And this idea of embracing mistakes is so important, it's basically our next big pillar. Because in an anti-fragile world, you have to understand that mistakes aren't just acceptable, they are the absolute essential fuel for growth.
Think about it this way. Stressors are just information. A system that's perfectly protected, one that never, ever has small failures, well, that's a system that can't learn anything. It can't adapt. And all this does is allow these huge hidden risks to build up silently just under the surface, which, you guessed it, creates the perfect setup for another turkey problem.
And this slide just illustrates the difference perfectly. Take the airline industry. It's an amazing example of an anti-fragile system. I know it sounds grim, but every tragic plane crash gives us critical information that makes the entire global system safer. The errors are small, they're contained, and they improve the whole. Now, contrast that with the economy. The failure of one bank can create this contagion that spreads everywhere, making the next crash even more likely. The system is practically designed to be fragile.
Okay, so if we can't predict the future, and if we now know that mistakes are actually good for us, then how in the world are you supposed to prepare for anything? Well, the answer is you stop trying to write some perfect, rigid plan, and you start collecting options instead.
And this is the secret weapon of the Antifragile. It's called optionality. It's basically any situation where you have the choice to do something but not the obligation. And this gives you this incredible lopsided advantage. It means you get to be exposed to huge potential upside from random events while your potential losses are tiny and capped. You basically get all the good stuff from uncertainty with almost none of the bad.
So how do you actually do this in real life? With something Taleb calls a barbell strategy. The key is to avoid the fragile middle. You put the vast majority of your resources, let's say 90%, into things that are extremely safe. This protects you from a catastrophic wipeout loss. Then, you take that last 10% and you make a bunch of small, aggressive, high-risk bets. This structure basically makes you bulletproof to negative surprises while giving you huge exposure to the positive ones.
Okay, last pillar. We live in a world that is just drowning in forecasts, advice, and opinions from so-called experts, right? So how do you filter out the real signal from all that noise? Well, Taleb gives us a simple and, frankly, pretty brutal filter.
You know, this isn't some new idea. For thousands of years, we understood a basic principle of fairness and risk, symmetry. Just look at the ancient code of Hammurabi. It makes it crystal clear. If you create a risk for other people, you have to be exposed to the consequences of that risk yourself. It's the ultimate cure for recklessness.
And here's the problem. The crucial point is that so many of our modern systems are designed to break that symmetry. They allow people in power, we're talking bankers, politicians, commentators, to get all the upside from taking big risks, while passing the devastating downside onto the rest of us. They get to be anti-fragile at our expense, leaving us to be the fragile ones.
So this one question becomes your shield. It's the only filter you need. Before you listen to anyone's advice, just ask yourself, do they have skin in the game? Does this person share in the pain if they're wrong? It's a simple test, but it perfectly separates the talkers from the doers, the empty suits from the captains who actually go down with their ship. All right, let's bring this all home. Building an anti-fragile life. It's not about trying to become a better fortune teller. It's not about fine-tuning your predictions of what's coming next. Honestly, that's a sucker's game.
It's about completely re-engineering your relationship with uncertainty itself. It's about designing a life, a career, a whole mindset where shocks and errors and surprises start working for you, not against you. A life where chaos literally becomes your fuel.
So in the end, what Taleb gives us isn't a map of the future, it's a compass for how to navigate it. Look, the world is always going to be volatile and chaotic. That's a given. So the only real question is, what are you going to be? Are you going to be the porcelain cup that shatters under pressure? Or are you going to be the Hydra that uses that very same pressure to become something more?